Surprise, surprise. When somebody shows up, if you hear me, just confirm the sound is working. I had some sound glitches today on a video I recorded, so if somebody can just confirm the sound check. Okay, thank you, Bob. So guys, this is going to be a short live stream because it's one topic. It's not some all day whatever thing, But I made a video on it, my computer glitched. So I figured that video, as well intentioned as it wasn't meant to be. So I figured we'd try it this way. I cannot guarantee that I won't delete this later if it just becomes, a witch burning or something. But, it's a super important topic. A lot of people are very caught up in the clouds in. And as unpopular and controversial is what I'll say here is, it's important for me to be as sincere and authentic and courageous and caring, whether it's understood or not. It's very important for me to be, okay? And no doubt I'll lose some subscribers over this. And there's plenty of resistance and opposition, lots and lots in the world about this. But for the few of you with ears to hear who really sincerely want to understand, get some clarity on this topic, because you can sense possibly that there's a massive lack of clarity, let's talk about it. So I'll just start with kind of a basic explanation of what I see, what I'm aware of, and what some of the implications are. And then you guys can kind of like bounce ideas and thoughts and maybe, add to the conversation based on, your own observations and feelings and thoughts about it, life experiences, perhaps, who knows. But this is just a specific topic that will continuously come up on this channel. So there needs to be like a video about it. In this case, the video will be a live stream, which is fine. So my summary of the whole thing, I guess. Around 2,000 years ago, you have this guy who was a Herodian and a Pharisee and started having his own, this guy had been a serial murderer of Essenes and followers of the way of the real Yeshua. That had been his life. And at some point he starts having visions of his own private Jesus, who very much and completely contradicted the real one. And whether this was a psyop or this was just his misconstrued conception doesn't really matter that much to me. There's which way it went, but it served to undermine the real gospel and give you an inverted synthetic gospel, a counterfeit. And if you've seen these patterns long enough, you realize that this world immediately always creates a counterfeit to something real. The world's filled with counterfeits. It's filled with non-truth for you to live in until your spirit is embodied enough that you don't live in non-truth. It's a growth process. So this guy, he self-proclaims himself the 13th apostle, and is his own private Jesus, contradicting the real one. And the real apostles, Peter and James, and these writings are still available. Of course, the Romans took it out because they made a political weapon called a religion and tortured and dominated and blood sacrificed all kinds of people to get control of the world through what they did. But you can still find the real writings where James and Peter frequently asked this Saul of Tarsus to please stop doing what you're doing. It's not the gospel, and Paul would have these kind of legendary ego trip writings that he would write back to him, often contradicting himself, going all over the place from overly false humble to overly false self-aggrandizing, kind of a bipolar pattern, really. And nothing against Paul. I'm not judging the individual. I'm just talking about this doctrine that came from some of this. So it created a counterfeit gospel, which is the biggest issue here. But right behind that, probably in a close second place, is this concept this concept of the rapture. So there's this idea that, he had this vision from his private Jesus that again contradicted the real one. By the way, Yeshua himself said, beware the Herodians, the Pharisees, and those that will come saying, here is the Christ and there is the Christ. Don't believe them. Paul literally did those exact things. And immediately a counterfeit gospel was created. Okay. Because the world's been brainwashed into the counterfeit, they have the hardest time just listening to the real thing. So you have this thing he came up with. Okay, slaves, don't try to not be slaves because, just believe this certain thing. And any second, my Jesus is going to come out of the clouds and take you to the clouds, and we're going to live in the clouds. If you're not married, which means you're not going to bear children, because that was a cultural norm, it's like, well, don't get married. There's no point. Don't do that. Don't start anything, because any second now, my Jesus is going to come get us all from the clouds. The one that tells me all these private revelations that are better than those other apostles. Okay. So he said, for sure, my generation, very soon, this is happening. Of course, it didn't. And it's a good thing people didn't listen. They went ahead and kept reproducing. The species didn't go extinct, obeying Paul's fake Jesus, his counterfeit. And because people were already under the spell of the Romans who tortured and forced it upon humanity, this same thing goes on for 2,000 years, even though it didn't come true. It just keeps being repeated. And it sells really well, especially when people feel like the lifestyle, their comfort zone that they were enjoying isn't working anymore. All of a sudden, they're like, I want to be raptured. I'm all about the rapture me. Get me out of here. Now, when you're under the spell of a great cult, you can't use any of your natural faculties. You have to dumb yourself down to an incredibly low level, because anybody with any remote little bit of understanding of human psychology understands what escapism is. And anybody with any sense of heart understands the implications of things that are incredibly unhealthy for the consciousness of human beings. But all that goes out the window when you have to absorb poison Kool-Aid in order to fit in to what the authorities of the cult or the peer pressure or the things you just never questioned until you do, if you do. So here we are, 2,000 years go by. Now, Paul's false gospel says that God created these humans and you're all flawed. You're hopeless. Now, he's talking about himself, but he starts projecting it on the rest of us. He says, you're hopeless sinners. You're born evil. You're all on your way to eternal torture by default. So Paul's God made a bunch of garbage that it's a male figure, of course, specifically, who apparently lives in the sky. He can't stand his own creation. I mean, let's have some real talk about this, guys, in a world that finds that really difficult. Can't stand his own creation. You're garbage. But that's not God's fault. That's your fault. An innocent baby is not innocent. It's born doomed under the law of sin, or whatever he calls it. So you're garbage, you're filth. God can't stand you. And the only way God can stand you is he does this pagan blood sacrifice of the innocents thing, which is exactly what Yeshua and all the real Essenes did their best to end on this planet. The blood sacrifice system of animals, people, and everything else. But Paul's gospel is that, the Father tortured his innocent son to death to cover you in innocent blood, because then magically he doesn't have to hate you, and he can just give you a free ticket to heaven and pretend you're okay. And then everybody else in the world, who all the countless billions before this occurred, because apparently this Jesus showed up late. He woke up late on humanity. They're just burning in hell forever. And anybody around the world that didn't happen to successfully be brainwashed into saying certain magic words is totally doomed. According to Paul, you're depraved. You cannot be righteous. This is projection. This is Paul. This is a serial murderer with a lot of issues, the poor guy, projecting his reality onto you. This is how human psychology works. This is just how life works in consciousness. So you're trained to believe, if you're in this cult, and it's not your fault, by the way, but anyway, you're trained to believe you're doomed, you're garbage. Somehow that's your fault. And unless you're covered in the blood of the innocent, that the Romans so kindly tortured to death for you, because apparently that was God somehow. Unless you believe this hideous insanity, you'll just be tortured forever in infinite agony for infinite time, which is literally infinitely unjust for even what the worst person ever in human history could have possibly done. So somehow, when you make something absurd enough that it's like 180 degrees from anything remotely true, somehow that makes the magic spell work better. This is another interesting pattern about humankind. And when a collective group of people, of course, collectively believe something insane, it makes the energy field much harder for individuals to rise above it. That's another thing about the collective consciousness field of humanity, or the blue pill matrix of human slavery of consciousness, or many other things you could call it. So what would Yeshua say? He would say, you will know a tree by its fruit. First of all, he warned you so specifically about exactly what was going to happen with this false prophet that, it couldn't be more specific. But he also said there's a narrow path, few are going to find, and it'll always be very, very few with the eyes to see and the ears to hear in any given generation or iteration of humanity. And that's true. It's not like I'm expecting that by making this video, a bunch of people are going to snap out of the cult. In fact, there's probably going to be, a lot of trolling here, or stone throwing, or witch hunting, possibly, before this live stream's over, okay? Depending on how protected it is from that or not. But I'm okay with that. So you have 2,000 years. Here's the fruit. Here's the fruit that it bears, since people don't like to look at the fruit. What fruit has this doctrine created in humanity? It's created 2,000 years of people who call themselves Christians, who are absorbed in a blood sacrifice, pagan, torture, murder legacy of the Romans, basically sitting on their hands, bearing no fruit, not doing a single thing Yeshua said, burying their coin, like he said, is foolish to do, and waiting for someone else to come out of the sky and fix it all. And every single generation is sure it's their own. And you have these rock star preachers dancing around selling books, millions of people unconsciously just cheering wildly, flailing around that they're up on the stage saying these hideous things. All this energy given to it. And you have countless millions of people, or the number might even be bigger by now, who have come to this planet to bear light, being that the divine is within you, whether you know it or not, and that's what you come from, and been completely talked out of it by the darkness with something so absurd that I think that's actually why it works, is because it's so absurd. And by the way, I'm not judging anybody, even though I'll probably get judged a lot. That's fine. They're only throwing rocks at themselves. They're not hearing this, okay? And that's okay. Like you said, if you don't have the ears to hear, you just don't. That's the way it is. You're still closed out. You're still in outer darkness on this, unless you're not. So for the few, that will lose your life, metaphorically, maybe even physically, but most often you'll lose your life. If you pursue truth, guys, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not going to go over specifics. I'm just going to be honest with you, because a lot of you are kind of at a crossroads where you're coming up against this now. If you truly put the truth first, the way, the truth, the life, the light within, and follow the divinity within you that you're made in the image of because you come from it, you will lose what you call your life. You'll lose jobs. You'll probably have to leave the country you're from. You'll lose family. You'll lose friends. You'll lose possessions, you'll lose comforts, you'll lose your health, you'll lose many things possibly. Not that people actually have any health in the modern world, so you won't lose that. You can't lose that. There's nothing to lose there at this point for humanity, but you'll lose a great deal in a worldly sense. I'm being honest with you right now, just for those of you wondering. Yes. And that's not because God desires sacrifice. It's because the upside down world forces you to sacrifice a great deal to follow any truth. Yeshua said, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Go and learn what this means, Pharisees. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Now, I guarantee you, every Pharisee walking the earth right now and ever, if they're the one being sacrificed, suddenly they would completely understand that. And yet, men in positions of power and religious control over others' minds don't understand that, okay? Metaphorical darkness, blindness. So, you have this doctrine that has handcuffed people from bearing fruit. He said, you are to bear greater fruit than I. I'm the first fruit on the tree. I'm opening this up for you. I'm handing this baton to you. Bear greater fruit than I. Now, guys, why do you think this hasn't happened? Because a massive counterfeit like this. Okay. Now there are people that have actually manifested a lot of miracles, including myself at times when I'm in the right frequency, let's say. And you can't compare those things anyway. But he told you, some of you will bear greater fruit than I. And Paul's gospel tells you, you're all garbage. You're all going to just sin uncontrollably. And all that matters is that you believe some certain blood sacrifice thing. And if you go to God covered in the blood of his innocent son, magically, you're going to get eternal life. Well, everybody else is just going to burn screaming forever, even if they actually did live a righteous life, which he says is impossible. And many other places in the same book you've been told is infallible says is entirely impossible. Excuse me, entirely possible. The Bible itself references plenty of people who lived righteously. Okay? Now you can go ask a pastor and listen to the Kool-Aid and be put right back into the blue pill spell like a politician dancing all around saying a bunch of words and not answering that. But if your eyes are open and your heart center is open, you can hear and see what I just said. It couldn't be more plain. Again, these things have to be extremely absurd in order to work. The spell on humanity has to be so absurd. So now, Americans, for example, their American lifestyle, which has been incredibly selfish and luxurious compared to the rest of the world up to this point, have this worldview that, they're God's people, practically Israel itself, who also thinks they're God's people and you're not, and it's just idol after idol after idol. But they've always, the American viewpoint, and I know it from the inside, is like, we are a Christian nation. We are God's people. We are blessed and abundant. And our American lifestyle is so good and great and whatever. And now that that's gone, and some are slowly catching up to the fact, now the comfort zone is not comfortable anymore. So all of a sudden, sales on books and ideas about the rapture are up again. Hollywood's using it. Your local rock star on stage is using it more than ever. All your fake prophets on the internet are using it more than ever. I cannot tell you guys how many people have ended up homeless because they gave their home to the church and went to sit on a log and wait for the rapture because their false prophet told them it's imminent. And this has gone on for 2,000 years, over and over and over, proving itself completely false, and everybody continues to go along with it. If you want to wake up out of the tube and not just be a battery and face this and not participate in it, go ahead and face the absurdity of that. Just that one thing. If you apply this here, you'll find that many things in life, you'll start to discover complete counterfeits of what's real. That's what happens in this world of metaphorical darkness. You are given divisive, powerful, fear-based programming and other forms of manipulative programming that are always a counterfeit of something true, powerfully true. So, speaking from experience, I could go into things that I find particularly painful and offensive about this, like what it does to the nervous system of a child who is still innocent and isn't stone hard in their heart, and they hear things like, oh yeah, God's going to pour all this wrath on the earth. He's going to take a few people covered in innocent blood, and then he's going to hurt a bunch of people on the earth. He's going to hurt until he wipes everybody out. And then he's going to throw them all away in this magic kingdom with his equal and opposite devil guy, and they're just going to be tortured forever. Now, adults can sit there because they've gone to sleep a long time ago and they don't feel their heart center anymore. And they can say, oh, it's so beautiful. I have a ticket to heaven, Oh, I'm sorry, honey, that, you're not going to make it. Maybe I'll buy you one of those Rapture survival packets or something. So maybe you can live through the wrath of God for a while before you go to hell forever. But anyway, I'm going to a cloud soon. Now, guys, I'll give you a bit of metaphorical, ironic symbolism here. Basically, people already went to the clouds. And instead of bearing fruit in this life, they've lived for 2,000 years in the clouds of nonsense. They've lived and died in nonsense. They've buried their coin. They've bared no fruit. They haven't done a single thing to be like Yeshua. And they've agreed to his blood sacrifice and to being incapable of bearing any fruit anyway. So it's all about believing something absurd. And righteousness means nothing because it's impossible. The real gospel has been inverted. And then you have this other insane doctrine that's incredibly popular. What is its fruit? Its fruit is that there's no fruit ever on the tree. And a tree that doesn't bear fruit gets cut down and thrown in the fire. So what do you think the broad path to destruction really is in this context? Do you think that when he said the narrow path is incredibly narrow and few find it, he meant that billions of brainwashed people in the right cult get eternal life for believing something absurd? And everybody else who might have lived as a much better person, whether they ever heard this or not, might have actually bared some spiritual fruit in their life, gets thrown in a fire and tortured forever? And you got, pastors bragging about, I've saved millions of souls with my crusades, blah, blah, blah. What is narrow about that path and what is sincere, and where are people's hearts? Now, those of you that know. You don't even need to hear this. You don't need to hear human words just, pointing out the fallacy in other human words. You already know this. And the brainwashed will come on here and they'll, say, oh, you're the devil, Bobby. You're the devil, Bobby. And I understand, been in the same cult. And you're doing everything Yeshua told you not to do. Every time you judge what you think is me now, you are judging yourself. You are pushing yourself further into depraved darkness. And that's fine, if that's what you're going to do with your free will. This video is not for all those who are going to subscribe to some completely selfish, completely destructive, absurd narrative of escapism and taking no responsibility for themselves. What did Yeshua say? What is the gospel? What is the real gospel? Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, and you'll fulfill it all. What is Paul's gospel? You're garbage, cover yourself in innocent blood, and crazy blood God will give you eternal life and torture everybody else forever. These could not be more opposed to each other, okay? And it is what it is. Rather than have to be asked in live streams forever the same thing and try to summarize it, I just figured we'd do this one live stream. And I've testified the truth on this topic, which is not easy. And it's already cost me more than the vast majority of you will ever be willing to go through for any kind of truth. But some of you will. And I want you to know you're not alone. When you're surrounded by the darkness and these demonic doctrines are destroying you inside because you haven't let your light go out and it hurts you badly, I can only salute you and commend you. And I want you to know you're not alone. To still be a light in the darkness and not let your light go out and become part of this darkness is incredible. And it's beautiful. And this is for you. And it's just to clarify what some of you already know in your heart, but you're not going to get, other than a few exceptions, this being one, you're not going to get any external validation in a world like this of what your inner child knows if you haven't lost your inner child yet. or if you've rediscovered your inner child and become like a child made by the darkness or obscured with countless counterfeits. So when they start throwing their stones, hey, thank you, Adam, so much, my friend, for the support. Thank you very much, my friend. When they start throwing the stones, when everyone turns on you and you realize the people around you don't know what love is and they don't love you and they don't have any love in them, and it tears your heart out to have to face it for what it is, just understand that that's what it means to be persecuted for the sake of righteousness in a world like this. Your reward is great in heaven. And heaven is not strumming a harp on a cloud for some crazy maniacal dictator. Heaven is a kingdom that grows within you now, and you were asked to bring it to this earth. It's not a place, it's a state. And you'll enter a much better dimension of it after this short physical experience called an earth life as a human. Okay? Much, much greater will your reward be than all the suffering you're put through here by those who have sold out to the darkness, okay? And I know it's brutal. Those who do not succumb suffer greatly in this world, not because God, not because the real creator wants sacrifice or blood or torture or pain or any of those things, but because humans have free will here to listen to the darkness. And the darkness is much easier to listen to. The darkness tells you things like, oh, you don't have any power of righteousness anyway. So go on committing all your evil sins and just say this weird magic code to save your video game, and you'll get eternal life. And who cares, you know? It's okay if everybody else screams in agony forever, even if they actually were good to their neighbor. That's fine, long as you get what's nice for you, right? Goodbye, heart. Goodbye, spirit. Goodbye, soul. The real parts of you that are divine cannot abide filth like that. They cannot abide it. So if you embody that filth, and again, if you are brainwashed into a cult from birth, it's not your fault, by the way. But if you're struggling with this, it's a sign of life. It's a sign of consciousness. It's a sign you still have access to your spirit. You can still bear light in this world. You can still be a light into this world like you were asked to, instead of participating in the darkness and the enslavement and the perversion and the destruction. You can, and that's powerful. That's kind of the basic gist. I could ramble on and on about it, but let's see if any of this can bounce off of any of us here in a productive way. Appreciate you guys being here. Even the haters, even the blind. They're not going to hear anything here. They're not going to see anything here. They're unconditionally loved. They're just not open to it. And they can't feel it because you can't abide evil and be in touch with unconditional love. You can only be in touch with a counterfeit of love that calls itself love and is absolutely unloving to the deepest, darkest degree. Thank you, Crowbar. Appreciate it, man. Love you too, brother. So that's my little monologue on it, you know. And this might be a really short one, guys, but sooner or later, I have to go through all the resistance. And you guys have no idea what this has already cost and done to me in life, but it's more than worth it. It's more than worth it, okay? So the least I can do is testify the truth to a world that, as usual, doesn't want to hear it for the sake of the few who do. Because I love you. And because your real source and creator is a wondrous thing beyond description. And love, our best human idea of love doesn't even come close. So, of course, in this world, you're taught a counterfeit. This is a world of duality. You will always see a truth, right next to it a massively active, overactive, aggressive counterfeit, because the truth doesn't impose on you and the counterfeit does. That's the world you're in, guys. That's here. You came to be a light into the darkness, and you can't do that if you're just down here and it's light. And by going on with some mind cult majority, you think you're in the right because you chose the right mind cult. That's all ego. That's all selfish. That's all cowardly. And that's all unconscious. And the cost is great. You lose your coin. You lose what consciousness you did have. And it will be given to the few willing to bear it in this world and bear fruit with it and expand upon it. These are simple, true spiritual principles. And everything false prophets say, even if the whole world is deceived, which the whole world was told it would be and has been and is, it's not a future event, guys. You've been bamboozled there. The whole world's already been deceived long ago and lives under that deception. That is the perfect place to actually bear some fruit, to actually expand some coins like you were asked to do and shown how to do, given the energy and the spiritual guidance to do. And you have access to that to this day. And like he said, if you will truly seek and knock, I will be. Okay, Jalen, you've been told to perceive that in a certain way, just like if you go to a college, they're going to condition your mind to see the world a certain way. But let's strip away the conditioning. If you come into the world to give your life for many, let's say, and I'm not headed for this. I'm not here to be a martyr. But let's say that by me sharing this truth with you, I knew it's going to get me killed, and I'm doing it because I love you. It's for the many. See how childlike simple that is? But it gets turned into a perverse doctrine to control and abuse people. It's childlike simple, man. It's childlike simple and beautiful. This individual that's been made into an idol by the very people that tortured and murdered him has had the biggest amount of buzz made out of him of anybody in our recorded history. Like he said, the world will be deceived about it. He didn't have any illusions about that. But for the few who will bear fruit, it makes it much more possible. The first fruit on the tree shows the others what it is to bloom and bear fruit. And then you have doctrines that give people permission to selfishly believe they get everything and everybody else burns forever, and they're somehow comfortable with that when they didn't even bear any spiritual fruit other than hatred or counterfeit love. This is how deceptive the world is. Yeah, Hollywood uses the rapture all the time because it's big money. Just like it is for your church's cults. They make so much money. In fact, they'll have you give up your house and give them everything and go sit somewhere and die waiting for a rapture that doesn't happen. Because now you're homeless, nobody's going to listen to you anyway. And they'll happily take all that off your hands while you go sit on a log and stop participating in your own life, waiting for something that isn't there. The second coming is in those of us that'll embody it. I will be you principle. That's the second coming. Those of us who experience it know that. Those who are unwilling to experience will not know that. But if you think some dude is coming out of a cloud to just take you away from the hardships of your life when it's no longer comfortable for you, the absurdity of the ignorant selfishness of that, and not to mention the fact that your spirit, that is absolutely the exact opposite of everything your spirit intends for your life. You're here to be the light unto the world, not to find some cheap ticket to some fake heaven and escape it, guys. Okay? Yeah. I'm reading your guys' comments. A lot of good stuff here. I love it. And it'll be recorded on the feed for people to weed through the light and the dark and discern for themselves if they're willing to, because that is everything in this world. There isn't a book that is a God. There isn't anything in the hands of men that hasn't been touched by duality, for your discernment to taste the difference between light and dark? I mean, these things are self-evident. If you resurrect your inner child, if you're born again, these things are painfully simply obvious. But old hardened-hearted men and their doctrines and their comfort zone of control and saying, I'm right on their ego trip and everybody else is doomed, that absolute spiritual depravity and mental illness and emotional illness and physical illness and plague upon this planet doesn't want to be reborn as a child. That which is behind it does not want you to ever go back to what you are. So with that much resistance in the world and that much punishment for righteousness, it's no wonder most people stay blue pill as a metaphor. And they just feed the matrix. They believe nasty things that hold humanity in low consciousness and don't bear spiritual fruit. Again, for the few on the narrow path, for the few that are called apart, it's all the better to grow from spiritually. The real creator will use that which is intended for evil, which is immeasurably massive on this planet, for good for those who believe. Believe what? Believe unhealthy doctrines of poison? No. Be careful what you believe. That requires discernment. Yeah, Isaac, there is a special reason. It's the whole point of this video, my friend. And I guess that's not apparent, but it should be. Countless human beings who came to the earth and missed their entire spiritual purpose, there really can't be a bigger topic or a bigger reason for a live stream or anything else, okay? That's the reason. Yeshua didn't have a church. Yeshua didn't have a cult. He was from the Essenes. They lived it. They lived miracles, and the Romans tried to torture it out of them. And they burnt 5,000 pages of the writings and even more human beings. And then they created what you now call Christianity from that level of depravity. Does that mean anything to anyone? I figured this out by the time I was 20, and I was in a world so incredibly hostile. I had to hold it in until it almost killed me, the lack of authenticity, because it will give you a disease. Having to defile the divine within you will give you a disease and kill you at some point. Unless you're shut down and you're just, on autopilot and you're dead already anyway. The elephant's not behind me because it's just one more thing for a bunch of people to misdirect their attention on and call it the devil, Bobby. A lot of people that are deeply immersed in a blood cult are going to do what they can to distract themselves from having the eyes to see or the ears to hear. And any little thing you can do to make it not as easy for them to do that might serve them well, just maybe. And when you're in a certain cult, well, see, I know the rhetoric. I was trained deeply in that cult and I was deeply dedicated to it. I know exactly what it is and I know exactly what it does. Sometimes you have to go deep into the darkness in order to emerge knowing what's there because you've seen it. You have to shine a light in the dark to see what's there. And then it doesn't have power over you anymore because you can see it, because you have the eyes to see. Then you become useful to your fellow human beings. For all your suffering, for all the ravaging of evil spirits, it ends up being used for the good of all. Some of you are going through a process similar to that right now. Some version of it or another, or it's beginning, or you're already deep in it. This is just a signpost. This is just another part of the same divine talking to itself. For those that have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. That's what it is. Yeah. I agree with a lot of the comments I'm seeing, guys. This is an exceptional collection of consciousnesses interacting on this channel. And it stems from the fact that in a world that is hell-bent against any true form of authenticity, if you suffer enough to make a breakthrough and become authentic, it draws to you authenticity. Okay, it also draws resistance, of course, but it also draws authenticity. And that's miraculous in and of itself. And I just want you guys to know it humbles me. It humbles me and blesses me, the individuals that show up here and interact on topics that are of actual eternal value and meaning in the purpose of life, instead of just a bunch of opinions and outrage and addiction to outrage and drugs, fear porn and hopium. Fear porn in the morning to get you up and going and running on that hamster wheel that generates the darkness's energy systems while you're being experimented on like a rodent and systematically destroyed at all levels, every last bit of your humanity. And then hopium at night. So after you've wasted your life, you can just believe some nonsense. Fear porn and hopium. That's what sells. Truth doesn't sell because truth is a dividing sword. Unfortunately, it causes violence and loss and suffering. Even those that you believe love you, you'll find out the hard way they don't even know love. They don't know God at all. And this, the truth is a bright light that shines into the darkness and shows you what's there. And those of you going through that, I know it's extremely brutal because, well, like he said, rejoice. Rejoice when you're persecuted for the sake of righteousness, because your reward is great in heaven. Not some cloud, not some video game, not some Disneyland nonsense, not some Hollywood nonsense. We're talking something far beyond all the nonsense, guys. That'll make whatever they can do to you here seem like nothing. I just want you to know it's humbling and amazing. I want you to know you're not alone. And I know you know that, but sometimes it's nice to have it externally validated, even though this can't really be validated externally. Blessed are you if you know these things, but because they only come to you revealed from the Creator within. That's the only way. That's why all the cults in the world need you externally agreeing to things and demonizing the divine within you. Those missing pages in the Gospel of Mary are written in your DNA. There's nothing that the Romans or anybody else can burn on paper that needs to be your God. Again, those are nice external validation, very rewarding and rich, and some people had to go through tremendous suffering so that later, when there was some of us ready for it, those things could reemerge. But you actually don't need them. They're written in the infinite ether all around us. Truth will always be truth. And it will always be available to those who genuinely seek and genuinely knock, not pretentiously, not externally, not for appearances to oppress and convince other people. That's all complete nonsense, and you have your reward in full for your religions. But for those who internally are sincere about it, to whatever degree you are, you get more access. The Creator will honor the divine within you when the divine within you is honoring the divine within you and the divine within others. But when the divine accepts a counterfeit and the divine abuses the divine gets to have the experience of being in darkness. It gets to live and die in untruth, because that's the power of free will. And if somebody told you all this and made it easy, it would defeat the purpose, and we wouldn't even have this earth experience. There'd be no point. This is an incredible thing for the spirits who use it well. And it's very detrimental for the vast majority who fall asleep in it and actually lose light. Like I just said, James, when your inner child and your heart center is awake, to whatever degree between you and God, you and Source, you and the infinite wondrousness that is, whenever there's a sincerity there, whenever you're truly seeking, to the degree you truly seek, you will truly be given access. It is a perfect system, but you have been taught for countless generations things here, false truths that obscure that perfect system and make a world of victim mentality and blame and cop-outs who are meant to bear fruit. Somebody asked about this shirt. Yeshua. I actually had this shirt on before I realized I was going to do this live stream. But anyway. Much love to you too. DZ, that's a great question. And here's how that works. Yeshua's work, and I'll get to the book called the Bible in a minute, or the collection of canonized Roman ideas and edits. But let's even start with Yeshua himself. His work, the greatest work ever done of someone fully united with God. Thank you very much, Reincarnate. Much love and appreciation. His work has been used to do more harm upon this planet than anything in known history. Now think about what that means about the world we're in, guys. In a world of counterfeits that are overactive and ambitious, the light of truth gets turned into a weapon, and great damage and harm is done. Now, it only does that because people choose the easy path of unconsciousness and allow it and empower it. The same with the book. The book is a bunch of men's different recollections of things, various levels of ego. Some of it has actual higher information in it. There's a mix of divine and garbage, like everything else. That's why it contradicts itself so much. Just like the human ego contradicts the human spirit. There's a lot of things in there that are actually well-intended. And if a person had discernment, sincerity, and honesty and sovereignty over their own consciousness, they could take an honest, sincere look at things written in history and apply a little bit of reason and say, well, clearly the worldview at that time was very patriarchal and ignorant and caveman-like. Not that it's really much different now. For example, if a woman doesn't scream when you rape her, she should be stoned to death too. Because why exactly? Why is anybody being stoned to death, even if they did do something wrong? Furthermore, if a woman didn't scream when she was raped, we stone her to death. Oh, but God's ways are higher, and who are you to question them? The real Creator's ways are infinitely higher, unfathomably. But you can't tell me something that's way lower and nasty and just tell me to call it higher. I am not a liar, nor are you. So when you lie, and when you agree to a lie because of all the pressure and fear, you defile the divine within you, and you defile the divine within others and within this creation. And in that weakness, you participate with evil. Not because you meant to do bad, not because you're a bad person, not because you're mean. I mean, some are out to do evil on purpose, but I'm not even talking to them. I'm talking to you, whoever you are out there that's fathoming this, that's attempting to be rebirthed and alive in spirit, born again, the inner child you lost when you got here. And everything you had to do to survive being born here was in violation of the truth. This is why you have to be rebirthed while you're still alive. That would not have been necessary if you were born on some affluent, spiritually alive planet where you were given the truth at birth. There would be no reason for rebirth. You would have been given the truth right out the gate, and everybody would be in some awesome golden age of Christ-likeness, of higher wonders than we can currently imagine. But because you're born in a planet that gives you only counterfeits, in order to rediscover what you lost when you got here, you have to be born again. Does that mean I have to crawl out of my mother's womb again because men are all calcified in their minds and they don't understand symbolism and they don't understand spiritual principle? Of course not. Of course not. Those of you that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear already know. It has nothing to do with any of that. We're talking about spiritual principle of life. And again, it is actually a perfect system. Regardless of all the false doctrines and all the manipulation, all the nonsense that's all here, and this is why the world's going down the tube, headed for another reset as fast as it can, because everybody's stuck here and divided into different camps, thinking that if you're in the right mental camp and you hate the right things together, something better, like you're right. It's ego, it's nonsense, it's blindness. You need to rediscover what you really are. You need to be rebirthed as the child that came straight from the Creator. And then you'll know what to do with it. That's rebirth. It's a spiritual process. Yeshua grounded the possibility of it and brought it to this world, showed it, lived it, was it, embodied it, and said, you can bear greater fruit. And if you'll truly knock and seek, he'll be you. And no, that doesn't mean you're possessed by a person. It means the living Spirit of God dwells within your temple instead of darkness. You came here to be the love that's missing, Daniel, not just to sit around wondering and then go back and escape. You are supposed to be a light into the world. You are supposed to see what's absent in the darkness, find that inner child of who you really are, and be what's needed. Exactly like Yeshua did, exactly like he told us. And nobody can hear him. Why? Because ego is so much louder than spiritual truth. Ego will blood sacrifice and murder everybody on the planet before it will even admit that it made a mistake. That's ego. And then there's the other side of the coin, spirit, which is truth, which doesn't even change because it was perfect from the beginning and it was infinite from the beginning. And there is no beginning. There isn't even time. This illusion of time is just so you can go through an experience like a process so that you can process the experience. If this happened like a flash in the pan, which it actually does to your eternal spirit, but if you experienced it that way right now, like your human life just went boom, what would that be? That'd just be a weird energetic flash. We have the illusion of time so we can experience this process by processing it. We get to make choices. We get to decide what we feed. We get to decide what we embody and what we don't. And most people long ago gave up and quit deciding. And the darkness is forceful. The darkness hates free will and violates it. So it infiltrates you every and any way it possibly can. But you have to agree with a non-truth for this to happen. And again, guys, it's not your fault that you've grown up agreed with non-truth. You didn't have a choice. Again, that's why the spiritual principle of rebirth. That's why he said you won't taste the kingdom of heaven unless you are reborn while you're still here and alive. And men are scratching their heads, intellectually arguing like all the dumb things people argue about now. A bunch of reductionistic nonsense and shallow garbage. There's no fruit in any of it. But that's why rebirth is necessary. It's a rediscovery. It's a fresh start when you're conscious enough to have sovereignty of your own life so you can bear fruit from the kingdom within you that is ever growing and expresses itself into this world how it does. And the darkness doesn't comprehend the light. So if someone doesn't comprehend you, move on. Shake the dust off your feet and go where those seeds can grow. Scatter the seeds of truth on fertile soil. Otherwise, it's really on us. If we waste our whole life believing any non-truth that stops us from doing so, we failed our own mission. And in your life review, that's going to be a pretty poignant thing to face. Deep breath. Yeah, right? Right, August? There you go. See? It's childlike simple. So why can't the world face it? The most blatant, hideous, 180, ridiculous contradictions. And at a mass scale, humanity can be sold the idea that no, it's all coherent and infallible. Do you know what that does to your consciousness? It fractures it all over the place. The amount of cognitive dissonance it takes to go along with doctrines like this guarantees that you're beyond insane, and furthermore, that you can't even access your heart at all, which means you're not going to bear any light in this world. It's spiritual handcuffing. The darkness doesn't care whether you would choose to dwell on what you hate or if you just have your head in the clouds believing in a bunch of nonsense. As long as you don't bear any fruit here, it's laughing because it thinks it can hurt the Creator by distorting you, because the darkness is incredibly ignorant. It may be convincing because it's so overactive and ambitious, but it's incredibly ignorant. That's why there's a lack of light in it. It's all non-truth that you can experience as truth, because that's how consciousness works. This world's just a playing field of it, with an incredible distraction of a bunch of animal-like sort of feelings and chemicals and distractions overlaid over what's really going on from the causal realm, which is what matters. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these other things will take care of themselves. That's also true. Why do you think that the so-called powers that be want you struggling so hard with day-to-day survival in their hideous slave system? Why do you think those that are meant to bear fruit are truly called apart and have to leave Babylon? If you're not an energetic match for the prison you're in, you can't be in it. Also true. I know what it's like to be a soldier for a cult and believe that you have to save people from suffering forever. So you got to get them. You got to go out there and get them to say the magic spell. And you're living in a nightmare. Because if you care at all about other people, and that's why you're doing it, your nervous system is fractured now, and you're completely insane and miserable, and I feel for you. It's horrible that your love and good intention and whatever's left of your heart is being used to spread poison and fear. And you suffer greatly, and a lot of people aren't going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, and you're the one going to lose sleep and health and destroy yourself with autoimmune disease, worrying about them being tortured forever. So if you're here to save me and save everybody from the devil, Bobby, because the truth is now unrecognizable, I just want you to know I have great compassion and love for you, even if you think I'm awful, okay? And you probably can't believe or accept that right now, but outside the illusion of this time thing and eternity, you will. You'll understand it very clearly. And you'll understand that there was always unconditional love. You were just taken away from it by non-truth. Nope, they didn't, Nick. Augustine, if you want to actually study all the things that were taken out of your canonized Bible that are still available, it's out there now. Okay? These things have actually been uncovered. If you want to make the effort to break the spell, you can. I'm only saying that in case you're interested, you'll find it. There is all kinds of actual records of Peter and James trying to stop Paul's false gospel that the Romans just took out of their book, of course, because they needed the false gospel to work. The evidence is there if you want to do the work. If you care, it's there. I assure you, okay? In case that's your actual motive. That goes for anybody. There are really good Bible scholars now who can show you this and show you the proofs of the older writings that did survive the massive attempt to burn it all off the planet. It's real, guys. Those of you who always knew this in your heart, you can even find those now enough to confirm what you already knew. Those of you who don't want it, it's because your ego loves this idea that You're God's people and you're better. And you actually revel in others being hurt forever, which means the darkness has you 110% to abide that kind of evil. You are meant to love your neighbor as yourself. And it is literally impossible to do that if you embody any of this filth. I don't care if you call it love. It's the farthest thing from it. It's literally impossible for your soul, your spirit, your consciousness can't be done. It's a lie. Your inner child knows this, but your inner child has to be locked away somewhere in a very dark place. And if you experience actual rebirth, nobody even has to tell you any of this because you're living it. Yeah, Luke, there's for those of you that want resources later for good Bible scholars that can lay this all out so your left brain can really educate itself to confirm what you already know or suspect in your heart. I mean, I link basic resources that help on that all the time, guys, but just ask in the thread below this video, those who actually care, those who actually want to seek. It's there. It's available now. I had to wait a long time on this planet, but it's there. And others lived and died suffering for what they knew, that they were just punished for holding on to the truth the entire time they were here. And great is their reward. This live stream is about something very specific, guys. I'm not sitting here helping everybody with every single psychological and health problem right now. We are honoring something extremely important. One of the biggest stumbling blocks to humanity bearing spiritual fruit. This is very specifically about that one thing right now, okay? The next live stream that I can sit there and give you 8 hours of undivided attention on whatever, absolutely, okay? But I'm not ignoring you. This is about something very specific. It has to be addressed by the few that are willing to do so. All right. People don't even know the theme, it looks like. The questions seem to be over. And this recording is long enough. It's an hour. It covers the topic that was needed. And probably that's longer than most people in their current condition can even hold on to focus anyway, unfortunately, because everybody's under so much attack at the DNA level at this point. You know, people are leaving the planet, guys, rapidly. And they're not getting to skip death and be taken in a cloud. And the selfishness of that, by the way, as long as you take me, it's fine, you know. I don't know. If you have a heart, you know what I'm saying. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry it hurts so much, but I'm also humbled that you're here because I know what that takes. So that's it, guys. I love you. I honor the divine within you, whether you do or not yet, and you can too. And like he said, if you'll really open the door, I will be you. That's for those with the ears to hear and the eyes to see and the heart to receive. Much love in Yeshua's name. Over and out for now.